Welcome to the show. You're listening to The Ecosystem, where we talk with the world's most exceptional entrepreneurs, investors, and emerging growth companies who are all making a difference in the world. The purpose is to be educated, spark a thought, and understand how the ecosystem all work together. All of this brought to you by the team at Fund. This is your host, RJ Pahura. My guest today is Desiree Vargas Wrigley. Desiree is the founder of Pearachute, a company that helps parents and children drop into the best family activities in town. Prior to launching Pearachute, Desiree co-founded Give Forward, the world's leading crowdfunding giving platform for people facing a major life event. Under her leadership, the company helped friends and family contribute nearly $160 million to loved ones in need. After graduating from Yale, Desiree worked at the Kauffman Foundation as a specialist in entrepreneurship and at Arabella Philanthropic Investment Advisors. Most recently, she taught new venture discovery at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. Desiree has been named Inc.'s 30 Under 30, Crain's 40 Under 40, and one of Parents Magazine Most Inspiring Moms, one of Forbes Women to Watch, and has appeared on Shark Tank, closing one of the largest deals on the show to date. When not working, she enjoys spending time with her two young sons, stepdaughter, and crime-fighting husband. For more information, check out fundecosystem.com. Now let's give it up for Desiree. Well, thanks again for joining us. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about what you do currently at Pearachute and who the target users are of your current product?
Yeah, so Pearachute is my second startup, and we are a platform that makes it easy for parents, grandparents, caregivers to discover and book the best kid-friendly activities happening in 2,000 cities across the U.S. So anything from finding your local community outdoor art festival that has some kids section to, booking indoor skydiving. We kind of have the full gamut of everything that's happening in the ecosystem.
Awesome. Now, I'm guessing you started this out of a personal need.
Yes, I did. Absolutely. My husband and I have two little boys together, and I also have a stepdaughter. And, as a parent, especially when you're a first-time parent, it can be really isolating. Like, you don't necessarily have friends locally that have children, and so you don't know where to turn to find your sense of community. And I think a lot of families wait until their kids are 2, 3, 4 before they start seeking activities. But really, honestly, you can start kind of prenatal and start to build your sense of community that way. And I didn't know that for the first time around. And also as a step parent and my husband having kind of co-parenting, you can't necessarily sign up for 12 weeks of something, right? Because you just don't have her every weekend. So we wanted to build something that was flexible, that accommodated the modern family, that was mobile friendly, and that also empowered local businesses to find new customers and generate more revenue.
Very smart. So is this... have you found that people are using it more in rural areas versus, the big city of Chicago?
So we originally launched in Chicago, and then we expanded out to San Francisco, Dallas, DC, and then Kansas City, actually. And we were under a different model at the time. We were more of like a class pass, where we were filling kind of unfilled spots and packaging that in a subscription at a discount for families. And what we realized is that that model just didn't scale very well, and we needed to be something bigger. So last year, we started building phase 2 of this business, which is really more like an Expedia or meets TripAdvisor for the family activity space. So we integrate with the largest event and registration platforms in the world, so Ticketmaster, Gold Star Tickets, Groupon, Things to Do. And now we're starting to integrate with registration platforms like MindBody Online. So we have actually 18 million bookable spots across the U.S. every month. We've had bookings in 200 cities. So I want to say we work in every city. And it's really just about kind of building the supply side of the marketplace for that to be really true at scale. Yeah,
that's incredible. What are some of the most sought after activities?
Yeah, it depends on the market and how many kids you have, honestly. So, first-time parents we often see are looking for more of the baby music classes. So, ones that their nanny or they can take their kids to. Swimming is always a big hit. And then as they get a little bit older, it's, karate, gymnastics, soccer. But where we seem to have the best response is in the kind of one-off special events that we're able to do with some of the brand partners that we work with. So, for example, right now we're doing Frozen 2 movie premieres across 4 markets with Quaker Kids Organic, and those tend to be our most successful because we get to bring in Elsa and Anna and, create some kind of craft or something and create these kind of like once-in-a-lifetime opportunities.
Big Disney characters right now, right?
Yes, some kids are. Then, my kids are starting to get older. I have a a 5-year-old and an almost 8-year-old son. So now they're really excited about like wall climbing and indoor skydiving. We've done several times. We love iFly. So there's just, a lot of great things to do.
Yeah, my son, we've got the iFly thing as well. Still owe him a trip there, so excited to get there.
All right, well, I'll have to send you some credits on the platform.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because the personal need I think that you're solving too. Again, I've got an 8-year-old and another one on the way. Is the fact that every month sometimes his interests change, right? He is interested in football, he's interested in baseball, he's interested in martial arts, but just getting him to stick with one can be challenging, right? So I like the open platform that allows you to see different things that are out there.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I think even if your kids are in soccer or swimming or baseball, you still have many hours of the weekend, and it's so easy as a parent to pick up your phone and let your kids pick up their whatever respective screen they're using, iPad or gaming system. And I think that while we spend more time with our children now, this generation does, than previous generations, I think a lot of that time is compromised because we're distracted by work or by the entertainment that we've allowed our children to create for themselves. And so getting people to step away from screens and go and do something out in the community together, I think just leads to like a next generation of families that are more conscious and creative and connected.
Very true. Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes I maybe have made with my son is buying him an iPad. It's like
we've all done it.
As soon as you give it to him,
we have two, and we have an Amazon Fire tablet.
Yeah, getting it out of their hands. Maybe just at dinner, when you're out to dinner with your spouse, right? That's like the only time that we're now letting him use it. So.
I have nothing against technology. I think it empowers them to be creative in the things that they actually, the apps that they find and the things that they do. You have to monitor it, obviously. Right. So it's not that we're against it. It's more about making sure you balance it with the FaceTime and the communication and the getting out of their comfort zone to do something silly. Like I sent my boys to dance camp during the strike, and at first they hemmed and hawed about it, and I picked them up and their nails were painted and they'd done all these cool gymnastics things, and they were so proud of themselves, and they'd really broken out of their comfort zone. And I think it's so easy to just let them direct themselves, but they're still so young. They need a guide, and we can do that as parents by opening up new opportunities.
Absolutely. It's funny. I was talking with a colleague about this, and it's like back in the day, mom used to say, don't come home until it's dark outside, right? Yeah. And now it's a different world out there. So
right. We have to be present for that.
Right.
And also, you only have 800 weekends with your kids before they go to college, which it sounds like a lot, but by the time they're 5,
you did the math.
I didn't. Someone else did that. But it's such a fleeting time, and each age presents such unique opportunities, right? And so, if your kid's really into Paw Patrol and Paw Patrol Live comes to the city and you miss it, that's a real missed opportunity. It's not the same thing as Lady Gaga comes and you miss her and you can see her again next year as an adult. That's different. And so, we're really trying to make sure people can kind of capture the most of this fleeting time with the most appropriate activities for that age.
Awesome. Well, we got a lot to cover, so I want to dig into your background, how you built this, where you've been in the past with your business experience specifically. I'm going to name a couple things here. You were named CNN's 7 Tech Superheroes to Watch in 2015. Crain's Women to Watch in 2011, Inc. 30 Under 30, and Crain's 40 Under 40. So you've got a lot of experience under your belt as an entrepreneur. Again, I think one of the more well-known women-led entrepreneur companies here in Chicago. I know you've successfully got a lot of the VCs here locally to back you as well. So can you talk a little bit about your fundraising experience? I know, again, knowing you for a while with Give Forward specifically, raising money for that, exiting, and then going into this. What has that fundraising journey, been like? Obviously, from starting with the VCs all the way up to Shark Tank.
Yeah, I really have been through kind of the gamut of bootstrapping for several years with Give Forward, and then going through an accelerator, raising angel money, then raising a Series A from two of the most kind of famous VC funds for that stage, Founder Collective and First Round Capital, then raising strategic from Nationwide Insurance, to having a company not perform the way that I hoped it would, and with the way that Give Forward ended up kind of closing or selling it ultimately. And then this time around, getting to start a company with, a pretty large convertible note. So I'll take you through that journey pretty quickly. I know I said it right there. So Give Forward, we originally started out in late 2007, early 2008 is when we were trying to fundraise for this business, because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. And it was one of the first crowdfunding platforms in the world. Crowdfunding wasn't even a word then. Kickstarter didn't exist. Indiegogo didn't exist. GoFundMe obviously didn't exist. And so VCs thought it sounded like a nonprofit, and it was not a fundable business. And I just knew that it had to exist. So I brought on a co-founder. He blogged back when bloggers could get paid for their content before they had to publish it. And I waited tables at Cafe Babariba here locally, and we worked on the business during the day. And we just labored on. We brought on interns, and it was an incredible experience, but it was hard. And then we got into Accelerate Labs, which was, it's now part of TechStars, but it was the first real incubator here. And in my previous life, I worked at the Kauffman Foundation funding entrepreneurship programs. So I had my antenna up for opportunities locally. And, there was no 1871 in Chicago. There was no real ecosystem. The ECC was kind of a boys' club, and, outsiders weren't really welcome in. And, there just weren't SBA loans for startups. And so it was just a weird time in Chicago's startup history. But we got into the program, and we were the first company on stage at House of Blues. And David Cohen from TechStars said, if you find other angels to invest in you, I will put $150,000 in. And it was our first kind of outside vote of confidence, besides Tim Crosskopf, who was one of our early mentors. So, between the two of them, I think we had 200,000, and we closed the remaining 300 pretty quickly, because we had this platform, right, that was the first round of this big accelerator in the city. So I think we were lucky in a lot of ways, because we got to kind of come of age at the same time the city was coming of age, and we were a social venture at a time when no one was talking about social venture, so we stood out. Then, the business was growing, and we were nearly profitable, so it was easy to raise a Series A in some ways. It wasn't a lot of money. It was $2 million, I think, on a $7 million pre, which, given the fact that we were doing like $85,000 a month in net revenue, probably should have been more, but we didn't know what we were doing. And then we went on to raise another $4 million from Nationwide Insurance to kind of build the next generation of our product. I did make a mistake and doubted myself and hired a CEO to replace myself. And, kind of a confluence of things. The Facebook algorithm changed our revenue. There were some, hiring decisions I probably wouldn't have made. Ultimately, that business struggled after I was no longer the CEO. So I moved on in late 2015 and found myself suddenly as a stay-at-home mom, and realized the problem that needed solving was in the kids' activity space. And so I went to many of my investors who had invested previously in Give Forward, and I got a $1.2 million convertible note, which I know is pretty unique and only happened truly because I think of the reputation I built over the last 8 years before that as part of this community, and as I found it with, I think, hopefully integrity.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think just being sort of an independent outsider, that's your reputation is like stellar here. So no wonder that you've been able to build this, grow this, and now onto Pearachute. So what's the fundraising experience been like with Pearachute? And obviously going through you got your convertible note. I don't know if you're doing another round of funding, and then
I have since raised about $3 million more. So it's interesting. I didn't think that this company would be so hard to raise money for. And just to be perfectly candid, being a consumer-facing business in the Midwest is challenging, because the mental model here for success is SaaS, it's food delivery, it's fintech, and occasionally it's CPG or products or direct-to-consumer products. So being consumer tech here, there just aren't a lot of analogs for success. And even if you look at like Grubhub or Groupon, like at its core, they're kind of also SaaS, right? And so or they're food delivery, I guess is really probably a better statement. So I think that we talk a lot about how there's less access to capital in the Midwest, and I would argue that in the consumer space, it's actually more about access to less capital. We're often able to raise, $750,000 or $1.2 million, which is just not enough to get you to build a product and test more than one round of unit economics. And so we end up kind of not burning. A lot of us are very efficient. We'll get through 18 months on $1.2 million, which is unheard of on either coast.
Yep.
But then we, don't have another opportunity to pivot or evolve the model. And so a lot of our companies here die on the vine. And I think it's one of the main reasons why we don't see more diversity in tech, is that there's not enough of an investment earlier on in a business. And so women, people of color, and of course, even just white men all struggle in the consumer space to get real traction. And I think it's why we also can't attract that much tech talent in Chicago. Technology people want to work on things that their friends have heard of, and most of them are not, enterprise SaaS solutions. They're the cool new app that's on their phone or whatever. And so if we can't build a consumer ecosystem here, I very much doubt that we're going to have a thriving tech ecosystem.
Interesting. So a little bit more about that. Are you sort of suggesting that we should potentially get earlier stage capital, like pre-seed money, seeding ideas basically? Or are you suggesting that, the 750 to $1 million plus is a little bit more tough to get?
I think we need bigger seed rounds here.
Okay.
For consumer, I think that, and our expectation in the Midwest is that people will have Series A numbers at the seed stage, and in consumer, that's very, very hard to do. In SaaS, if you build something and you get one or two big clients that are, $150,000 a year clients with 89% margins, then it's like a clear business model and they can see the multiple. It just takes longer with consumer, and the less capital you have up front, the longer it takes.
Right.
And so it's very hard for us to get the 20% month over month user growth numbers that we need without the capital to do the marketing once we have something that we know that works.
Yeah.
And this is not to say that, to play the victim. I've been very lucky. I've been able to kind of keep tranching my way into pivots and growth. And we're finally in a business model that is working and accelerating. And I feel very confident about the future of the business. But I empathize for my peers whose businesses have gone under in the last 18 months because the capital just isn't here. And if you are a founder in the Midwest, building relationships on the coast is hard. But it's even harder, honestly, if you're a woman, because if you're a mom, you're just not going to spend 3 weeks out in San Francisco pitching 40 investors because you have to come home. I mean, dads come home too, but the truth is that a lot of the burden or, work falls on us, and we want to be home for that. And I think also it's just, we're not going to be staying up until 2 a.m. out with people after, TechCrunch disrupt or whatever. We're just not. And so the relationship forming has to happen in these bite-sized chunks of approved settings, and it's just harder. And people invest in what they know, and they invest, if they're taking a bet, they want to bet on someone close to them that they can keep an eye on. And being in Chicago or being in the Midwest, we're just naturally farther away. So we either need the big funds from the coast to come in and, set up shop here and make some multiple investments so they have a reason to be here frequently, or we need local funds to step it up at earlier stages and put more money in faster.
Interesting. So again, just perspective, my optics are that, you've really done a good job of putting yourself out there as, a female entrepreneur, CEO, someone who's been very successful raising money and obviously building now 2 companies. What would you say or advice, for getting out there for other people that are wanting to put themselves on the map and make sure that they're successfully raising these rounds?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I think that sometimes as founders, we have this kind of misconception that we need to be heads down and just totally going on our business. And we forget that we're not building our businesses in this, vacuum, that we are out in the world building something for, if it's a marketplace, it's, 2 sides of this world. And the best thing that we can do as founders is represent our businesses as often as possible. And so basically I just say yes to almost everything, because I do have some rules, I'm not away from the kids more than 2 nights a week if I'm not traveling. So, I'm not going to be out at networking things every night. But I think that, it's amazing how serendipitous the relationships are that you find when you're out. If you're coming into them with a level of you have to be prepared and optimistic, and you have to be building something that matters. You can't just be out there being the face, but it's your job as a founder to be out there spreading the message, making sure that people know that you're a great place to work, making sure people know why you exist, what problem you're trying to solve. If you pivot like we've done twice now, you really have to be out there communicating the new message of the brand. And so it's just part of the job.
Yeah, I love it. So can we talk about Shark Tank?
Sure.
All right. Yeah, we can't. We're allowed to talk about Shark Tank. I know.
I believe so. It's been so long.
Yeah,
so.
They have some interesting rules behind it, right? What was that?
Contract is long.
Yeah. What was that experience like? I think anyone who's looking into entrepreneurship thinks, I'll just pitch it on Shark Tank and this will happen,
silver bullet,
right?
right? You become rich overnight. I think that can be true. I think if you are a widget of some form, like a product, it can take you from, chugging along to exponential growth. I think where it's harder is when you are a service or a technology. And in our case, we launched March 15th of 2016. I want to say it was like April 15th that the Shark Tank production team reached out, and June 17th is when we filmed. So we were only 3 months old. We had very little data. We were a subscription service with we knew we had a loss leader strategy. We offered unlimited classes for $99 a month. It was not sustainable. It was when ClassPass was really the darling of the VC world. So we thought that would be a big, opportunity. But then, we didn't actually air for almost a year and a half. And
wow.
So that was a weird experience to have this thing happen on the show that was so exciting. And then, the deal fell apart actually in negotiations after. The terms were pretty challenging for me as a second-time founder. It was really designed more for people who hadn't done this before. And so there were just a lot of concessions that were hard to make. And then also, we just didn't have massive growth. So it was kind of a parting of ways during the negotiation process. I think we missed the editing cycle. But anyway, we ended up airing in October of 2018, so almost a year and a half later. And it was incredible to see the traffic, but
and the business had taken on a whole new level at that point. Right?
Well, we were in 4 markets at the time. We found out we were going to air 3 days before, which is not normal. And so we had to spin up all of our servers, and we launched Washington, D.C. in 3 days over a weekend to prepare for a Sunday night air, which was a really big feat. And wow. I'm so impressed with my team for being able to do it. But so we learned a lot about ourselves as a team. I would say that's a great thing. We had kind of a new floor for traffic. We never kind of went below that floor, but it wasn't the silver bullet. We also weren't national at the time. I think it would be a very different story if we were on there right now. Maybe we'll get picked up for a Beyond the Tank story someday. That would be great. But in the meantime, I'll just say that I'm glad I did it. I don't know if it's right for every business. And a friend of mine who was on the show that does have a product, she just wrote a blog post about how, the weekend that they were on Shark Tank, they did X amount of business. And now 3 years later, using much smarter strategies, they do that much business every day. And so, I think you have to look at it as a launching pad, but it's definitely not a sustainable launching pad. You have to have enough kind of fuel to be able to actually leverage it into something else.
Sounds like it's very unique for each individual.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Scrub Daddy killed it. But the rest of us, I would say, kind of a spectrum after that.
Yeah. So you mentioned strategic versus venture versus angel. I think that's
bootstrapping, don't forget.
And bootstrapping. Those are all really interesting stages too, right? Dealing with strategic investor. I think you said nationwide insurance versus dealing with a venture capitalist versus dealing with an angel investor, and then obviously there's bootstrapping. And I
also did crowdfunding on Republic, I should add.
Okay.
So definitely have the full range.
What's your experience with each of those, and what have you found to be the most effective for you?
So the first time around, I had Ethan, my co-founder, along board, and he came from California, so he had some connections out there, and we were such a great team for fundraising because he would go out and do all the first meetings, and then say well, you got to meet Desiree, and so then when we'd get the partner meeting, I would get to fly out and do the razzle dazzle show, So it was a great setup because I didn't have to do all of the heavy lifting by myself. This time around, I'm realizing how much work that was and coordination, and you really do need a CRM to manage your conversations with investors. And I do a pretty good job of it because I'm decent at sales and biz dev, but it is. I
appreciate you saying that because we just had another person in talking about just that, managing your investors like a pipeline, like an active sales pipeline, right?
It's true. And remembering who said that they were interested in hearing a follow-up, and then is that really true? And, who's just information gathering because they're looking at other deals, and, you have to keep really good notes, and, it can be hard, especially when you're busy running your business. So I'm not going to say that I'm a pro at it at all. I've done it many times, but some of our indirect competitors have raised way more money than I have. So, take it for what it's worth. I think that each kind of fundraising or bootstrapping plays a very specific role, and you have to be honest with yourself about what your business is and where its potential lies. So, bootstrapping a company it's not going to get you on, it's not going to get you into all the major tech magazines or, online stories, but GoFundMe bootstrapped until they sold, half of their business for $300 million. So, and they were a competitor to us, and that was a tough pill to swallow, that we didn't win to them, and we did not bootstrap. So I think my perspective now is that if you have an opportunity to bootstrap, you should do it as long as you possibly can, and that not that venture is the enemy or angel is the enemy. It just creates complexities and distractions, and if you can avoid it, like if you can generate enough revenue from sales to run your business, you should do that all day long. And it's a lesson actually that we've learned with Pearachute. So we last year spent most of the year very capital constrained, and so we just went out and made money, and the business was able to pivot because of that, and then we were able to raise a little bit more to actually fund the pivot, because we had to do a lot of build for this new generation of the product. But yeah, I would say it's not a necessary evil, because it's great. I love the VCs I have, and I'm very lucky to have Paul Purcell and Sam Yegan on my board, and I've had some great investors coach me along the way. So I think the best thing about raising money is that you get to bring other people in on the business and have their expertise and be able to learn from some of their portfolio learnings, but it also creates a lot of extra work.
So would you say that what's the journey like from a VC getting venture money versus the strategic capital? What's that experience like? Is it obviously there's professional investors, which are venture capitalists, and then there's corporate venture partners, which I would say, again, this is just my take, but a lot of the times it's more like an R&D group, and they're looking to innovation, something along those lines. Was the experience different going through the inception all the way to close with a corporate venture fund versus a VC?
Well, we were lucky that Nationwide had hired a local VC advisory firm, so it was a more familiar process, and Is that common? I don't know.
Okay, I've never heard of that. That's why I'm asking. They were the only
strategic that we worked with, so they were just putting together their innovation team, and I think they were deploying around 20 million, and so they wanted help. I'm not sure where that program is now, and I don't want to create any kind of perception that this is easy money to get or likely money to get. I think it's actually very unlikely, and it can be dangerous for your startup. If you can get a really outsized return, you probably won't get it if you have a strategic investor, because they're able to see everything that's happening with the business and will likely be your first offer if you're really providing value in the vertical that they're looking at. So I think you have to go into it with your eyes open. In our situation for Give Forward, we thought that they were an incredible partner, because we were building basically this next generation of giving. It wasn't just about giving money to loved ones going through a crisis like a home fire or flood. It was more about sending dinner, sending things from their Amazon wish list, and really kind of empowering all the other ways people can give, sending dog walkers, whatever it was. So we were excited about the opportunity for partnership, and their expectation was that the partnership would lead to a lot of revenue, and they wanted to be part of that growth. Ultimately, we didn't get to finish building that product, unfortunately, but yeah, it was a cool partnership, and it's one that I would do again with Pearachute, because we actually do fall so naturally within the travel sector, or I don't want to say anything else.
Yeah.
In the registration software space.
It's very interesting. Well, congrats on getting them as well as an investment.
Thank you.
So just a couple minutes left. I mean, what's next for you? What's next for Pearachute, and where do you see things in a few years?
Yeah, so it's exciting when you unearth a category that doesn't have a category leader. And what we realized is that within the kids activity space, there are websites like Red Tricycle and Mommy Poppins and Chicago Parent. But if you are traveling from one city to the next, you don't really know which one to turn to figure out what's happening with kids of every age. And a lot of them are difficult to search by location, or not mobile friendly, or they're a local mom blog, so they're just not going to have the technology behind them. And so what we realized is that there's just no national brand that families can turn to. And by creating a national brand and not coming in and competing on, we're not trying to be open table where we're bringing the technology to the restaurants or to the providers, because there are 180 registration platforms out there that we've seen so far, probably more. And so we don't want to displace any of them. We want to be the partner or the conduit of the transaction. And so it's exciting, because we get to kind of build something that's never been possible before, because these open APIs weren't really available before. And we have the great fortune of seeing companies like Viator and Fair Harbor and Peak kind of accelerate in the experience space, but still not create a vertical within the family category. And so it just actually feels like somehow in a crowded market, we actually found our lane, and it's pretty clear. And so that's where we're headed. We're building the world's largest marketplace. We're starting with the US. I imagine that we'll be international within 18 months. We should have 150 million bookable spots of activities by the end of 2020. So, yeah.
It's incredible. Well, congratulations on the success thus far. Cannot wait to see where you're at in the next year or so.
Thanks.
And if people want to find you or Pearachute, where would they go?
So it's parachutekids.com, but Pearachute is spelled like the fruit, so Pear. And then I'm at Desiree Chicago, I believe, on Twitter, and Pearachute Mom on Instagram, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing your journey today. It's been awesome, and very much appreciate being a part of it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You're listening to The Ecosystem, where we talk with the world's most exceptional entrepreneurs, investors, and emerging growth companies who are all making a difference in the world. This is your host, RJ Pahura, with our special guest today, Desiree Vargas Wrigley. For more information, go to fundecosystem.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, folks.